Welcome to the What's Next podcast. Today, Mike and Brian sit back down with Logan Barrett from Antler Group and talk about how to get involved with charitable work at home and abroad, and how to vet the organizations you're looking at getting involved with. They also talk about his work with hazardous chemical release, risk and disaster management services, and ultimately bringing the worlds of his work in charity and emergency services together. So if you're ready, buckle up and let's go.
Welcome to the What's Next podcast. My name's Michael Hactus, and I'm here with my good friend,
Mr. Brian Stevens.
Mr. Brian Stevens. And we've got a return guest.
Yes.
Logan Barrett.
Wow.
Welcome to the show, buddy. Listen, we've been sitting here chatting, and all of a sudden we said, just start rolling the camera.
Logan's like, what the hell is going on right now? Like, what did I walk into?
Steven says, I'm already recording. So we thought, let's just keep going. And we do. So as you know, the What's Up podcast, or What's Next What's Up podcast.
Well, hey.
Well, what's up?
What's next?
What's next? So the What's Next podcast, we bring in guests that and we share open conversations about their story and different things that they're going through. And because we really truly believe that everybody's got a story that they're not alone in. People connect, and they connect through stories. And we've had a number of people that I've spoken to saying, this story touched me, or that story touched me. And there was a lot of different things that you don't even realize that people are going through, and they're just afraid to knock down that barrier and step forward. So, yeah, want to thank all those that are watching, all those that are listening. We've got a great little following, which Brian and I were shocked. We thought, the only one that's going to listen to us is Steven, because he's working in the back here. But no.
And he's not really listening.
Yeah, and he's going, holy shit, this time can't go quick enough. I
How
came
come
home.
The clock went from 30 to 10,
Yeah.
like really quick there. I don't know. Whatever.
You got to remember where we are. It's Brant time, Brant County time. Anyway, we're going to lose all those listeners.
Yeah.
So anyway, Logan, we've had you here before. We love the conversation from Operation Orphanage.
Yep.
And you were down in the Ukraine at just before we got on the show as well, which was really cool. And Brian and I both wanted to get you back on the show, and we sat down and he goes, what the hell do you guys want to talk about? Like, I'm done. I got nothing else to say with that. No, pal, you have lots to talk about. You really do. And one of the topics, well, Brian, you're going to jump in because you got a couple things on your mind you wanted to ask too. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that really touched my heart when you were talking about is a lot of mission work that you've done overseas and stuff. And again, through churches and things like that, I know our church, they offer different ways that you can get involved, but that's not exactly the area that I want to go to. So how do you find somewhere if you want to reach out and just give back? A lot of us later in life, and you did it earlier in life, which is very cool, but how do you find somewhere to reach out and offer your service?
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
That's why you're
here. And I'm trying not to say
done.
as much, because when I listened to the last one, I kept going So I think that, so loaded question. So the work that I've done, I've never volunteered through a church group.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that the first step that you have to take is find out what motivates you, mm-hmm. right? Because it's a different type of person. There's people that, when they see an issue, they donate to it, or they put it on their Facebook profile or whatever.
Right.
Right. And then there's other people that, when they see an issue, they want to go and deal with it hands-on. So I think that the first thing is to find out what motivates you, and if it's church, right? So it's a religious component. You want to volunteer in a capacity through the church. That's a really good starting point. Yeah. There's a lot of very, very good organizations run through multiple churches that operate abroad. Particularly, when we're working in Moldova, most of the groups that were at the borders mm-hmm. of Ukraine were small church groups.
Okay.
But then when you look at, if I was Brian, for instance, with a whole different other aspect of skill sets, practicing medicine, that sort of thing, there's different avenues to take those away. So I think that number one is find out kind of what your goal is, right. what your timeline is, and what you can commit. Mm-hmm. Once you've established that, it comes into research, like researching the best NGO, so that is a non-governmental organization or charity.
I was going to ask, because we mentioned that last time.
And we're blessed with Google.
Yeah.
Right. And you can start looking into what fits your, mission type. And once that's complete, the next step is due diligence. So I've worked in multiple different kind of disaster zones, if you want to put it that way, right. or conflict zones, whatever. And the one thing that I've noticed is that there is a lot of what's called disaster tourism or conflict tourism, right? So I'll give you an example. In Sierra Leone, I was working there was a large mudslide in Freetown, and I was working, trained in the military there at the time, but there was a lot of NGOs. Everybody in their mom showed up to help at this mudslide. And you're working in a working scene, and we know that from emergency. Certainly, there's a lot of danger. There's you could have a secondary mudslide. There could be crime, looting, whatever, and it's not the time for Joe Schmo to show up and hand out lollipops.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
So that's one thing, is to understand the mission. The other thing that I think is very, very important is to, when you're in your vetting process, understand where monetary donations go. Right? So look for grassroots organizations. A lot of times the larger organizations that have a lot of reach are very good at certain things, right? So anything that's tied to these multi-million-dollar charities, they're very, very good at sending sea containers of supplies into an area full of sweaters, or in the millions of units, right? But if you want to make the most impact and you have a certain skill set, I think it's really, really important to research grassroots organizations that are within a country. Okay. And I could go on about this for hours, because specifically around medical work and any type of, practicing medicine or working with children, it's extremely, extremely important, right? So for instance, if I was a paramedic or a doctor in Canada, that doesn't mean that I can just show up in Liberia and start performing surgeries, right? There's a massive amount of paperwork and permissions that you get from the local government, right? Yep. So I think for the listeners, if there's people that are motivated in doing this, number one, I would suggest do it. Don't wait on it. It definitely, a lot of what I look at in my life is that a lot of my friends went to university for their education. I went to Africa, and that gave me a very, very cool education that I've been able to use for multiple years, and confidence, and just a perspective on how the world works. So the first thing is don't wait. The second one is really, really educate yourself on what you're getting into. Okay. Looking back on me when in 18, 19, and starting out on all this stuff, I know I wanted to get involved with things and help and whatever, which is good. But at the same time, there's a lot of lessons learned, right? Particularly, the last 5 years working with different organizations. I have a different skill set now within emergency services, and really rooting out who brings the most good to a situation, whether it's monetary, supplies, services, whatever, right? And morally and ethically sound work as well. That's really, really important. Yeah. Really important.
And the reason I asked and is because, it's one of those things that we truly are blessed in this country. I mean, we are. I mean, my wife and I, we've got two great families with our daughters and their spouses and 3 grandkids now. And we look at how blessed and how lucky they are. And when you see these different images, and I know, we're seeing images on TV, and whether that's true or not, I mean, they always paint a different picture, I think, really. But I just would love to be somewhere, to give those little kids an extra hug and be there to help them do something or learn something. I mean, and with, retirement around the corner at some point, I'd really, truly love to do that. As Brian, you've discussed that as well, right? And I know Vicky loves to be in the kitchen and cooking and everything else. And that's her passion is feeding families and that, and she'd love to do it too. So I appreciate that, because it's one of the things we definitely got to look at, but it's always one of those, you're not sure you're looking in the right channel, and where to find that, and where's the best place to go, where's a safe place to go, but yet they still need you, because there's so many people that are crying for help globally that we could help.
The biggest thing too is the way that we do things in Canada or the United States or Britain or wherever you're coming from doesn't necessarily match the way they do things in another country. Right. So it's extremely important when you're researching organizations to work with, that their message and their sounding board off of locals and their operations is ethically sound, right? Sometimes if there's say there's a drought, sometimes, delivering water trucks isn't the right answer to that. It might be water purification, how to build wells. There's so many cultural intricacies that goes around volunteering, and you have to be so careful. I can have, many times people have approached me to, I'm really interested in this, I want to volunteer. I found this NGO or charity, and I can be a real vindictive person when I'm starting to research it, particularly peeling back the monetary donations, where the money's going, what their mission is. or especially around missionary groups. There's some fantastic, really good missionary groups to go abroad. Like sometimes these people are on the forefront of conflict zones that nobody else will stay in, right?
Exactly.
And seeing that type of work ethic in that situation is very, very cool. But at the same time, what is their goal, right? If it's a church group, are they being cognizant of the local culture? You know what I mean? Are they, if you have a hospital that is performing surgeries, what kind of, and they're funding that hospital, what's their checks and balances? Do they pull the funding if the hospital screws up? All those things. So you need to be very cognizant. There's a lot of damage. There's a very, very good book called Dead Aid. It's written by a lady, I believe she's from Zimbabwe or South Africa. I can't remember her name. She worked for the World Economic Bank, or I probably screwed that up, the World Bank.
It's okay.
And it's very interesting. And she talks about how giving monetary donations to most of these countries and situations is the worst thing that you can do.
Yeah, exactly.
So those concerts like Live Aid, where you're giving a paycheck to a country, there's corruption, there's, it's never getting to the people. So looking for grassroots organizations is extremely important.
Okay. Okay.
Now, when you, Logan, when you find a group,
Yeah.
You go through an application process?
Yeah, and that should be part of it.
Okay.
Right? So, for instance, myself, I'll use Operation Orphan as an example. So, you apply. They have a whole in-doc program. You have to go to the UK to do a tryout with them. It's very, very, strict. It's very, very tough. It's not easy. And, they're asking the questions, police checks, vulnerable sector checks, all that stuff. We work with kids. So if you are, and this brings me to another side, particularly when it comes around fire, EMS, military, police, if there's people, and I don't mean to be rude when I say this. So if you've applied to get jobs in Canada and you've taken pre-service fire, pre-service police, whatever, and you can't get a job, but then all of a sudden you apply trying to get those skill sets into a charity. If that charity doesn't do any type of vetting process, like think about medicine, right? When you get your advanced care paramedic, imagine you just approach a charity and said, I'm an advanced care paramedic. And they said, good, let's go to, Sierra Leone and start practicing medicine. That should raise alarm bells, right? There's a serious, anytime you're dealing with people, there's a serious vetting process for sure.
So now they take care of getting you over there, getting you home.
Yeah, I've worked with a bunch. Full disclosure, I think I said in my last podcast, Operation Orphan is my first kind of venture into dealing with NGOs. Most of the time I travel, I'm getting compensated for it. I'm doing some sort of consulting, and every NGO works differently. You know what I mean? Some maybe you fundraise yourself for your own trip. Depending, when you look at the larger ones like the ICRC, that's, you get paid. It's still, they do charity work and that sort of thing, but those placements are paid positions. So there's lots of different avenues out there.
What's ICRC?
That's the Red Cross, International Red Cross. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's throwing all these letters at me. My head's going to explode. NGO, ICRC, DUMB. Cool. No, that's awesome. I've had a number of people reach back to me, and that's exactly like they said. You definitely want to give, and with Ukraine going on, I sent some money as well. Went through another channel, and then is it going to get there? What I did is I went through a channel that I knew went directly to this person because I deposited in their account for them to help their family out. So that worked. But that's always the fear is, I'm going to. So good point, Brian. Yeah. Is there a system you got to go through to get approved and everything else? That's important. So
the other crazy thing is that like looking at Ukraine, it's a horrible, horrible situation that should be on the forefront of everybody's mind. But again, when it comes down to, looking at world policy and what's happening, Ukraine is one very, very, very bad conflict. Afghanistan is going to be the human rights and horrible situation of our lifetime. Like that's cooking up. And a lot of charities that are doing work in other countries, again, it's what is the hot topic, right? Right now, there's certain things on the news, and I've even noticed it with Ukraine since the last time I talked to you. It's getting way less airplay.
Yeah.
It got a little bit this week because of that bridge bombing, but it's not nearly as much in your face. So it's kind of what is feeding the news cycle. But when you research and do some very basic, what's going on in the world, where's the need, there's a lot of other places around that people aren't thinking.
Well, like I said, you're so connected in all those areas, like Afghanistan. I'm ignorant as hell. Like I try to avoid listening to the news because it's so negative, and I try to keep a very positive vibration in our house all the time. And I don't even know what's going on over there right now. But like you said, it's
going to be that. I mean, famine, drought, human rights, you name it. It's like they're that pull out, that whole thing. I feel so bad. Like I have a lot of friends that were in the armed forces that did amazing work in Afghanistan, and it's just breaking everybody's hearts watching what's happening over there, and it's not getting the news play. And I mean, the stuff that does go on isn't even suitable to discuss on like it's so bad, right?
Wow.
Human trafficking, organ harvesting, thing like this is stuff that you think is out of a movie.
Yeah, see, like I say, ignorant as hell because I don't.
It's insane. It's absolutely. I was on a conference call with a doctor. She works in the Middle East. She's from Afghanistan and currently is in Pakistan. She goes back and forth from Afghanistan to Pakistan with her brother. And she's posting constantly on LinkedIn different stories that, you get this grassroots information on what's actually going on. And, it might be a female broadcaster that worked on the news the last 7 years and, she gets home one night and gets beheaded, right? It's like there's stuff that doesn't even cross what we're thinking about. It's absolutely insane.
And that's what I love about this podcast is Brian have always said, we're gonna dig in deep.
Yeah.
And because we need to, because I mean, what we see on the news is always, glorified or whatever else you want to say. But I mean, we don't get to see what's really happening. And you're hearing this stuff and talking to people that are over there. That's just incredible. Wow.
Yeah. What? Now, I wanted to touch on what you were doing down in Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Help out because that was catastrophic.
Yeah, I wish we could have done something in more of a capacity, to be honest with you. So our business, Antler Group, we specialize in hazardous chemical releases, CBRNE work, risk management, and disaster management. So what we kind of bring to the table in those situations, Nova Scotia and in Florida, is almost like a technical advisory service. So we have a few clients. There was a few calls in Nova Scotia, quite a few in Florida. That's the last time I couldn't make it on the call is on the phone.
Yeah.
They, so people will call. They have some sort of an issue, generally surrounding chemicals, right?
Okay.
And we try to supply some sort of technical advisory service. But the other cool thing, and the reason why I wanted to start this business, is a lot of people in Canada don't realize the capacity of emergency services contractors, and where private assets can come to an emergency situation and help out. And I'm trying to bridge the gap between a money-making venture and what I can connect these people on the NGO and charity side. So for instance, like I have a lot of colleagues that run UN certified search and rescue teams, these things. So when I'm talking to clients in municipalities, I'm saying, how is your swiftwater rescue and flood response? Do you want me to connect some dots? And I'm, trying to get everybody in one thing. And that's a cool feel-good story for me. And that was one of the big motivators. Yeah, it was a huge motivator to start a business because I'm going, there's so many skilled, capable people that work in a contracting capacity in emergency services. Why can't we connect the dots that, obviously we have a business to run and I don't run a charity and I need to pay my bills. But at the same time to connect the, it's really, really interesting. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. So we didn't get a chance to go down or go out east, but there's a lot of really cool discussions and we did get some assets there and try to, connect people that could work together. Right. Which is awesome. So.
But isn't that like really what goes on right now in the whole, even like the mental health arena right now? That where I'm drawing the comparison here is that people are just not aware enough. They're not educated enough of what's out there, what's available. Much like what you're talking about here right now, is people, and due to ignorance and just due to lack of education and awareness, they're not aware of what's out there and what can help.
There's so many assets in North America that can come from privatized services to help people in disaster zones or help fire departments to deal with some kind of major chemical release. Like people don't realize that when you see a train derailment happen in Canada, the fire departments play a big part. The majority of the people there, putting their lives at risk, plumbing a rail car, transferring the chemicals, they're all private contractors. That's not a municipal service. So it's something that gets me excited. I want to add a value to a municipality that might not have the resources to handle something themselves. And it's just cool meeting people from, different walks of life. And when a hurricane happens, we can supply some generators and trailers and this and that. But also, do you need a swiftwater rescue team is really, really cool.
Well,
right.
And looking at the whole thing, like I said, the East Coast and Tampa and everything else, or Fort Myers and everything went on down there. So now they're reaching out to you for guidance and that for?
Yeah. So in that particular, like in Florida, we were working with 3 chemical companies down there that had some damage to their infrastructure.
Okay.
But then once that conversation is done, then I start asking the questions and I say, who's your municipal emergency management coordinator? Do they need anything? I have these assets that I can, get to, or maybe I have contacts in another part of the States. The States is an intricate one when it comes to emergency management because they're very, very set up with FEMA. They have a lot of assets in intercommunication.
Yeah.
Canada, there's a lot of value in that, but overseas, that's where it really comes into play.
Sure.
If you have a hurricane in a country that produces petrochemicals or some sort of hazardous chemicals, we can get people over very, very quick, which is super cool. That's what really excites me about the business.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
You can see your energy since we got onto that topic.
Yeah.
Sat up in his chair and I went, what the hell's wrong? What happened to his chair? But that's cool. I mean, it's like you said, as we talked about with the mission work and everything else, it's finding what your passion is, finding where your heart is, finding where you can help and serve others. And you're doing it. It's awesome. It's so cool.
Why'd you call it the Antler Group? Should have called it Connect the Dots.
I can't give you all my secrets, but I wanted something that sounded a bit Canadian. Right. So I was thinking, antlers, deers, moose, all that stuff. And then the other thing too is because Antler Group has been open for 6 years actually. And now I'm on a tangent. So where I started it was with travel and risk management. So companies, private companies, or people that say you have a daughter that wants to backpack, or daughter or son that wants to backpack abroad for 6 months, we would come and meet with the family, put together a total travel plan, and then have an emergency number that they can call, and that could be for anything. They've gotten robbed, passports, sexual assault, food poisoning, whatever. It's a bit of a hotline. Then we started getting into doing it for businesses. So say, Mike, you wanted to start a restaurant in Sierra Leone. Mm-hmm. We would come in and give a full package on how to start a business in Sierra Leone, the cultural expectations, what's going on geopolitically, finance, the whole bit. And then I really wanted, after Ukraine, I wanted to do something where I could still focus on hazmat and everything I was doing in my previous career, but also merge it with some of the travel. And that's kind of the best of both worlds. Mm-hmm. So I wanted something that sounded Canadian, but also scalable, that it wasn't tied to, environmental and hazmat work. It was something that, was a scalable name. So.
So would a restaurant be a good idea?
Yeah.
Throwing that out there. Oh, wait a minute. He said a restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Now, one of the things I want to go back, what you touched on, because there was a conversation I was listening to. It was a podcast not that long ago with Gary Vee, and he was talking about, a lady stood up and said, what are your thoughts on university? And going to university. And he said, well, are you paying for it? She goes, yes, we are. He says, he looks over at the kid and he says, have the best 4 years of your life, son. Party your ass off because you got no debt coming out. But then she says, well, what do you suggest? He said, I suggest you do something like you're going overseas, getting involved in different things like that, and learning to find out what the rest of the world's like and grow as a human being, and then come back. And I had to laugh because there's so many that's probably where they should have gone instead of going to school, because now they're getting out going, I don't know what I want to do. Now I want to go travel. You know what? Maybe go there first and find out what your real passion and joy is when you go overseas or something. And you found that, like I said, you can see your energy pick up when you found your passion.
I feel young people, I was in this box. I know for sure Steve was in this box as well. We went to high
Steve's
school
always
together.
been in a box. We're still trying to get him out of the box.
No, I feel
shit.
young people are pigeonholed into certain solutions in life. Like I really didn't do that well in high school, let alone chemistry. And now my entire job is chemistry. To the point where people are paying me to go abroad and deal with severe chemical issues, right? And I think that, I would never discount having an education and because that's also a roadblock that I've had now. So now when I get to a position where I'm dealing with something very serious, it's, well, what is your background? Well, I'm doing this for 10 years, but by the way, I'm not a PhD. So I definitely think that education is very important, but I think when people are coming out of high school or they're stuck in a rut and don't know what to do, the worst suggestion that I would give, just say I knew you and you're a young guy and I'm giving you some advice. I wouldn't say that I wouldn't go that far.
Yes, your buddy. Anyway, go ahead. The advice you're going to give this young guy.
I would just say don't throw money at a situation that you don't know what you want to do with yet.
Yeah.
So the worst thing that you could do is, you're stuck. You don't know what you want to do. And I feel like people need to be registered for something or say they're doing something to get some kind of gratification. And when they're talking with their friends, whatever, the road that I took to be here, it turned out well. I think it matched my personality type, but it might be a total disaster for somebody else.
Oh, for sure.
Right. So I think the biggest thing is that if you're, looking for something, explore your options, take a breath. There's lots of life left. You don't have to rush into anything.
That's the thing I think we get pushed into. High school's done now. What are you going to do? Well, you get into high school. What do you want to be? What courses are we going to get you lined up with to get where you're going to go?
College, university, applied, all these things, right?
I truly love that, that was his comment. It was, as much as it was in your face type thing to the mother. But
half of the university courses are officially done now. It's like,
so I look at that and I'm thinking that's brilliant because, you can always go back to school. And now this is my passion. I'm going to focus more on chemistry or whatever else. But I love that because there's going to be people out there that are listening. And I think that's a big message right there too, is, what, don't get pigeonholed. Don't get put in that box.
So with all that, Logan, you've been continuing firefighting?
Yep.
Yeah? How's that been?
It's good. We have a very, very good service. We're on with the County of Brant Fire Department, and my station's in Paris. So I grew up there. It's a very, very well-trained, capable interior attack fire service. The guys know what they're doing. They take it very seriously, and we have a lot of fun. A lot of fun. So it's that's something in my life that it's the coolest feeling in the world when you get to do something like that and help in the community. It's you guys met Phil, right?
Yeah.
So imagine doing something serious with
we
Phil.
We don't tell anybody.
Yeah, so I could rhyme off every name. I could call any of those guys right now and say I have some kind of issue and they'd be at your house. It's the best family dynamic or hockey team, whatever you want to say, they'll ever have. It's a very, very capable department.
Nice,
very capable.
That's really neat about the whole the frontline guys. It's and girls. It's that family, that community. That's so cool, and you don't know it until you're part of it.
No.
That's the truth right there.
Yeah.
And there's in a lot of ways, I think the best analogy, and we talked with Phil about this. It's just if you come from any kind of sports background or a situation where maybe there's just 2 or 3 of you doing the sport, whatever. It's that pack mentality, that approach, and when you're playing the sport, you love it.
Yeah,
and then you miss it dearly once you get away from it, and that's where frontline work really brings that to the forefront because it's a team approach.
Yeah, and the thing that people don't realize with volunteer services is how much other stuff they're doing.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like, I mean, it's really hard to explain to somebody. Your pager goes off. People are leaving their work. Doing a high percentage of our calls are medical calls. So you're gone for 45 minutes or so, whatever, or just in the middle of the night. Then you still have to get up for work the next day. You still have to do everything. And then the community aspect, Christmas hamper programs, parades, different fundraising, toy collections. It never ends, right? There's always something. And it's just really, really cool group to be involved
But that's
with.
why you do it, because you're involved in the
service.
community that you were born and raised in. You're giving back to the community you were born in. That's awesome. Good for you. Good for you.
It is awesome. We were talking before we went live here. Well, Stephen had us live already. We didn't know that, but hey, whatever.
He doesn't know what he's doing.
Whether
anyway.
he edits it out or not, we'll see what happens. But you'd mentioned, going back to the humanitarian work.
Yeah.
Okay. And we had talked about my passion obviously being in the arena of medicine.
Yeah.
And we talked about a group that you thought I would be interested in getting in touch. And I think for those that are listening, they may want to get involved with this as well.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different NGOs to look at. So medicine, microfinancing, water purification, all of that. Yeah. So the one I referenced to, I believe it's called Team 5. I researched them. They're out of the States. But I mean, don't pigeonhole yourself. Like you just do the research and try to figure out where your skill set's best used.
Yep.
That's the biggest thing. With medicine, like if your listeners, so say it's paramedics, doctors, nurses, anything like that, really, really, really do your research, because medicine, dealing with anything with medicine and with children is where, ethical boundaries need to be set. right? If you're a second year health science student somewhere, you can't go to Africa and start pulling teeth. And the thing is when you're in some of these countries, whether it's because you're Canadian, white, whatever it is, and it's I'm telling you the truth here is that you can go in and get a lot of leeway in your position, right? Because of where we're from.
Right.
So if your NGO or charity doesn't have a proper infrastructure to manage that type of ethical issue, then it's a total no-go, right? It's extremely, extremely important to research that. I'm not like any type of physician or anything, but it's like you have to have a line because, imagine, Brian, you're so first of all, you go in as a paramedic. Everyone's going to immediately assume you're a doctor, right? And then all of a sudden, somebody comes up and needs some sort of surgery, and they're going to be going, doctor, help me out. Like that's a clear line that you need to draw, right?
Exactly.
So definitely, medical and anything dealing with children, you really, really need to do the research and make sure that the organization that you're working with has all its I's, dotted and T's crossed. When you look at Operation Orphan, where we work, they like Brad, the director of the group, he looks for places that other NGOs aren't.
Neat. Okay,
right?
Cool.
So when you're in Moldova, Ukraine, wherever, if there is a huge influx of NGOs in a certain area, Brad's looking for the places that aren't popular. And then the other thing too, when it comes to NGOs, is that you're not going to push, like as a Canadian, we're not going to push the NGO's agenda. You're going there to figure out what the regional needs are. It's extremely, extremely important. So say we're going with the goal to hand out all these coffee cups and we have 1,000 coffee cups. What research has taken place to ensure that community needs coffee cups, if they can even use coffee cups, so if you're coming to a village and we're delivering coffee cups, you're taking up bedding. Usually somebody's going to get sick, right? So you're taking resources out of the community. You need to eat. So you're taking food out of the community. You're taking water. There's a bunch of different things that come into this. So is it really worth bringing this coffee cup? Who knows, right?
Exactly.
That's what you have to be thinking.
Right. Oh, you got a lot going on, man. A lot.
It's very cool. Like I love it too. Like you said, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to talk about? You got so much going on that and again, it's one of those coming from different worlds, and you've seen the world. You've been part of everything around the world. Excuse me. It's very cool. Yeah. I appreciate you being here, telling us, and we're going to definitely. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat, Stephen.
Frog, all right.
There we go. But we're going to have people reach out. Yeah. I know I've already had people ask how they get involved. They did with Dave Thatcher and in schooling and teaching. Yeah. So I appreciate that. And if we can, connect them to you to maybe even just put, because you can Google anything these days, but what you're Googling, I don't know, is it safe what I'm pulling up and what I'm grabbing?
You got to be careful. Yeah. High level, before we're done, I have a couple rules that I take just high level when I'm looking at something. The biggest things that I've seen for me to help communities in need, number one is empowering women, particularly women in business, because women generally look after the family unit. Mm-hmm. So microfinancing loans, empowering women to be able to work in their community. The next one is supplying healthcare. Okay, so this is in no particular order of hierarchy, but healthcare and teaching healthcare. Okay, that's extremely important. The next one down is literally education. Mm-hmm. So those are the three facets. Taking a bunch of coffee cups or throwing money at a situation will generally do more harm than good. If you can work within one of those three, you're usually in a pretty good spot.
Awesome.
That's great advice.
There you go. That's perfect.
Like we do at the end of every show, we ask what's next, but you're just waiting for the next situation to happen around the world, and that's what's next for you.
Yeah. He's hoping there's nothing,
Yeah, exactly. I hope there's nothing, but no, it's awesome talking with you.
I appreciate you being on again.
Yeah.
It was like I say, it's great when we sit down and you guests sit down, they don't know what they're going to talk about, but that was absolutely brilliant. There's a lot of nuggets there that I'm going to grab and take away, and hopefully you did as well, Brian. And Stephen, thank you again for doing everything, as always, for doing everything in the back. So there you go.
All right.
I'm Mike Hectus.
Brian Stevens.
And
Logan Barrett.
Logan Barrett. The Logan Barrett.
There it is.
The man of many hats.
The antlers.
There you go. Wow.
There we go.
Good finish. So thanks for hanging out with us again. And always be safe out there, and peace. We're out of here.